And now, you're tuned into RBLR, the home of Tampa Bay's Reveler Sports.
This is the RBLR Ray Show. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us here today. We have a special guest today. Ben is once again on the IL for some load management. And filling in today, we have Carter, who you will probably recognize from our Bucks show. Welcome on, Carter. Glad to have you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Zach. I really appreciate it. I work with the other Zach on the
You
Bucks
do.
podcast. So it's good to work with the good Zach, as we call
The
him.
good Zach.
That's right.
I don't know where that came from, but I will take it. I will take the good Zach moniker.
No, but I'm excited to be here. Thank you so much for having me on.
Absolutely. Well, and if you want to see more of Carter and more of us, you can like and subscribe to our channel on YouTube. The Buck Show's on there. The Rowdy Show. Rowdy just had a big win last night, 2-goal win last night. Good stuff. So subscribe to the YouTube channel. Check out all the stuff that's going on there. You can follow us on Twitter. Our ads are down there. You can see them on screen. Just come follow us. Follow what we're doing. We're building some really cool stuff here. All these teams have got some really interesting. All the teams we follow have got some really interesting stuff going on, and so it's a good time to be a fan of Tampa. It's a good time to get in on the ground floor. But going to the topic of this show, which is the Rays, we are going to be going over real quick just kind of this week that we had. It's a little bit longer week than we normally do, because normally we do it once a week. We did it last week on Thursday, so a little bit more to go over. So we had the Padres series, which was kind of the end of our West Coast road trip. We had a good first win, lost the last two of that series, but in reality, those West Coast series are hard. The Rays always struggle on the West Coast, so nothing too surprising there. Then we had a 2-game series against the Orioles, which was a split series. Those 2-game series are always kind of weird. It is what it is. Would have loved to win both. Had a chance to win the first game, despite the fact that we, got outscored by a lot, and we still came back and made it a game, which was awesome. And then we're in the midst of a 4-game series against the Royals. We're down 2-1 in the series, but have a great chance to finish off that series with Tyler Glasnow on the mound today. So I have good hopes for that. So that's kind of a little bit of a recap of where we've been so far this week. Bouncing back over to the Padres series. Carter, what were your takeaways from that series?
Ooh, yeah. That was kind of, I feel like that's kind of where the Wander, we'll get into the Wander thing, but that's kind of where it bubbled up and burst, kind of.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? There were those kind of rough errors and maybe some at-bats here and there that weren't the best. It's tough. The Padres are a great team. Playing on the road in the West Coast is always going to be hard, especially against a really talented but underperforming Padres team. So they've got a lot to play for. They're trying to, kind of revamp their season. So they're getting a chance to play the best team in the majors. They're definitely, they're not gonna sit back and play it easy. So it's a tough series. You can't really take too much away from it. The Padres are a really good team. So, what are you going to do?
Yeah, it's a good point. The Padres, despite the fact that when you look at their win-loss record, they're underperforming on the season. When you look up and down their lineup, Xander Bogaerts, Juan Soto, there is some serious talent. Fernando Tatis Jr., even in the rotation, Yu Darvish, who we got to, they have incredible talent on that team. And we've talked about this before. I've talked about this before, that the Rays, because they are now the best team in baseball, are getting the kind of treatment that teams that like the Yankees and the Astros have gotten in the past, where we're going to get the best shot of every team that we see, especially the teams we don't see as often, because they want to get a piece of the best team in baseball. And it was, it's the load management has been really tough because of the lack of off days. This off day that we're going to get after this Royals series is much needed. And I'm very grateful that we've been able to get even a little bit of rest. But those road trips, the way that road trip started, having no off day to get over there and just have to roll through that entire series, getting out of that road trip 3-4, in my opinion, was a win. I have no complaints.
Right.
It's just tough to go to the West Coast. But at the same time, it was fun to see some of those talented players, out on the West Side that we don't get to see very often. So I like watching, I like watching those guys play. They're fun.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I love the fact that Major League Baseball, changed the scheduling formats that everyone plays everyone. That's so much fun. I love watching. I'm a huge baseball fan. I grew up playing baseball. So being able to see, like you said, the big talents. I mean, I know Tatis had the steroid thing last year, the PEDs, whatever you want to call it. So it's a bit awkward, but he's still a great player, even with or without Machado. And and like you said, Bogarts as well. And then the Dodgers too. I saw the Dodgers when they came to town, and man, they're a freaking good team. I mean,
Yep.
it's tough, but yeah, I love the scheduling format. But like you said, the West Coast, brutal road trip, really tough to fly across the country, and then yeah, I can't imagine,
Well, it's funny because at the beginning of the last season, not this season, but last season, they very early in the year they went out to the West Coast and played the A's,
Mhm.
who we also saw on this road trip,
Right.
and lost that series in kind of embarrassing fashion. And it was a little bit of a like it was a gut check, and I think people started to get a little bit nervous at the beginning of that season. And
Mhm.
then sort of injuries kind of came soon after that. It was kind of a rough start to that season. So the Rays just do not like being over there. They do not like
Right.
being on the West Coast at all. So
For
I
sure.
think I'm glad that we were able to get out of that. But that being said, when we came back from the West Coast back to the East Coast, we came back to a tough series against the don't look now the second best team in the
Yeah.
American League East, the Baltimore Orioles. Uh,
Mhm.
Really intense series. It was a short two gamer, which is always a weird vibe when it's only a 2 game series because you either split or sweep or get swept.
Right.
And just kind of a wild little series there. What was your takeaway from that ALS brawl?
Yeah, I mean, it was the Orioles might be the second best team in the AL in general at this point. I
They
mean,
very mel yeah.
ridiculously talented team. If they could get a little more starting pitching, I'd have a lot of faith in them because that 1-2 punch of Cano and Bautista at the end of the game, it's like once you hit the
Yeah.
8th inning, GG, you're not scoring off of those two guys. So yeah, that was a really fun series. That first game, especially super competitive back and forth. The second one,
Yeah.
a bit of a wash, but yeah, I mean, the Orioles are going to play tough against anyone, but especially against a division rival and the best team in baseball in the Rays. So yeah, I was really excited to see that series. I have Adley Rutschman on one of my fantasy teams. He's a beast.
Yeah.
Up and down that lineup, just young talent, really, really fun team to watch. So yeah, not a whole lot of takeaways. I mean, series to series basis, it's tough to really take away a whole lot, but it was definitely the offense looked great. I mean, scoring 13 runs in a 2-game series is not something to scoff at. So it was really nice to see them take advantage of an Orioles pitching staff that, other than the back end of that bullpen, can be a bit shaky at times.
Absolutely. And I think the thing that people talked about the most from that series was the start by Tyler Glasnow, which was
Mhm.
maybe the roughest start we've seen in a Rays
Yeah.
uniform for him, to be
Mhm.
honest. He
Absolutely.
just did not have it. I think it was very obvious from the get go. He just did not have it.
For
Um,
sure.
and he grinded it out as much as he could. Obviously you would have loved to not give up those runs and not have
Right.
that start. But I think there's definitely a little bit of overreaction. I think the thing, and this is what I will speak to because I think there's some concern about this. The thing that people I think are the most worried about is his velocity. He is averaging. He was a guy that would get up to 99 and 100 on his
Oh, yeah.
fastball consistently.
Mhm.
He is sitting right now averaging around 96 to 97 on his fastball at the moment right now. I've
Right.
seen him reach back for 99 occasionally, but he has not gotten back up to where he was before. And it's kind of an interesting situation that we have to kind of watch is where is his velocity going to end up as he continues to recover from Tommy John. Like we've seen guys, you look at a guy like Noah Syndergaard, the velocity never came back for him.
Yeah.
And I don't think that that's the case with Tyler because I've seen him hit 99 since he's been back, and I think
Absolutely.
I'm certain that they're telling him to take it easy and not overdo it.
Mhm.
But it's got to be tough for him to go out there and have a subpar start when he knows the kind of stuff he has, and he just isn't happening. It's got to be a tough, it's tough to go through that mindset, and I think it just, it once again shows how difficult it is to play baseball and to pitch on a professional level because
100%.
there's so many things you have to think about that are beyond just like what's your stuff like how
Right.
nasty are you. It's your command, it's your situational awareness, it's your mental fortitude to handle
Mhm.
that kind of environment. It's the mental fortitude to give up 6 runs in one start and then have to come back in
Yeah.
4 days, five
Right.
days and he's pitching today. It's like you got to figure it out and come right back out there. And in a series where we need a win, where it's a two, where we're down 1-2 in the series, we need a series, we need a series tie here. We need a good performance from him. And that's not easy to be able to muster that up. And that being said, the reason why he is an ace and has been an ace for us when he's healthy is because he's shown that he can do that.
For
So
sure.
while it's not ideal that he gave up those runs and there's all kinds of, chatter online about it. I would not let the small sample size of one start get
Mhm.
away from you to where you're thinking, well, we gotta find starters. Let's trade Mead and Caminero to get a starting pitcher. Like,
Right.
let's just let it breathe a little bit. He's
Yeah.
still, and he hasn't even passed double digit starts coming back from Tommy John.
Yeah.
Let's let it breathe a little bit before we jump overboard.
For sure. And I think another important point to think about is the pitch clock. I mean, I think the pitch clock is a huge
Yeah.
adjustment for everyone, but especially someone coming off of Tommy John. I mean, you look across the league, there are guys that are going down, or there are guys that are high velocity, like Verlander and Scherzer look awful this season. There are plenty
Yeah.
of really quality pitchers that are just, for whatever reason, not pitching well this season, whether you blame it on the pitch clock or maybe any other arbitrary reason. It's tough to be able to, because in the old days without it, you could kind of fiend your way to rear back every pitch, 100% every time with your fastball. But now you only got 15 seconds. You can't take a little breather and, oh, well, let me just rest a little bit and rear back for this next one. Like, no, Glasnow's got to go bang, bang, bang. So, these higher velocity, higher intensity pitchers, those arms are getting a little fatigued because it's an intense, it's more bang, bang, bang. So I think that's a really important thing to kind of remember when we're thinking about guys like Tyler Glasnow or any other guys that put a lot of stress on their arms with the way they pitch. So yeah, I think it's a great point. He's not even double digit starts with the Tommy John, also not double digit starts with the new pitch clock rule. So
Yep.
I think that's something to consider as well.
Yeah, and you make a really good point about the pitch clock, because you also think about, people in their mentality and like what goes through their mind in between pitches, and
For sure.
whatever that was before, now that's got to speed up, and you've got to make that adjustment. And I feel like it is easier now than it ever was to snowball the wrong way.
Absolutely.
If
When
you
it rains,
if
it
you if
pours.
you if you feel like you're losing it a little bit,
Mhm.
you don't have, and like before, you could just kind of walk around a little bit and get and center yourself. And now you can't do that. Now you're stuck, and you got to figure it out. And I think that that's something that a lot of pitchers are, reacting to and dealing with. And you look at pitchers that did not come up through the minors, wherein this sort of pitch clock was being implemented, or coming through college when this was being
Mhm.
implemented. I think they're feeling that. Like Tyler, this has been Tyler's first introduction to this stuff. He didn't, like
Absolutely.
guys like Taj Bradley, they're used to it. They've been
Yeah.
coming through this,
Mhm.
they've been coming up through this way, and they're sort of aware of what, what that looks like and how to handle that.
Right.
Tyler Glasnow is not, and you can see that, and he'll make the adjustment. He will, and I think another offseason will be a big help for that. Just
100%.
another getting through this full season and getting in an offseason training program. I would be very interested to know what the offseason training programs are going to look like for pitchers as they're adjusting to how they need to pitch with this new pitch clock. What are going to be the adjustments that training staffs are going to make to help those guys? I'd be very interested to see what that looks like.
Yeah, absolutely. Because it's less. It's definitely a different beast. It's a different training program. You're kind of. I wonder how much they're going to just like turn on a pitch clock. Just have guys throw their bullpen, but with a pitch clock. Kind of that
Hmm.
sort of thing. Just kind of simulate that environment. Obviously, you can never simulate a real game, but just kind of make guys work a little faster. Because I was a pitcher when I was growing up. When you're throwing a bullpen, you're kind of lackadaisical. You're just getting the
Oh
old
yeah.
arm loose. That kind of thing. You're not exactly out there going pumping in pitches, getting the ball immediately. Like it's not like that. So, yeah, I'd love to see how a new offseason or a revamped offseason training program for these guys will work with the new pitch clock rule.
Yeah, and I mean the Rays have one of the best staffs in all of baseball, so I have full confidence
Right.
that they'll figure that out. I
Yeah.
guarantee you they're collecting data. They're being observant all throughout this season, looking for the ways that they can. Okay, now in this offseason, I know we got to do this to help this pitcher in this spot. They'll figure it out. And it's so true when you see guys like Verlander and Scherzer having just some of the worst seasons of their careers, and
Yeah.
like it's not a coincidence that we're
Mhm.
seeing these new rules and seeing some of the players that are used to the way things were before are struggling to make that adaptation. It'll be interesting to see how much longer some of those guys who have been kind of around for a while, how long will they continue to play, and how much the adjustments to the rules could affect their desire, not even necessarily their ability, but their desire to continue playing if they feel like it's changed so much. It might be an interesting thing to watch too.
Yeah, especially because guys like Verlander and Scherzer, they ain't young bucks anymore.
No,
Although I will say their salaries will probably be enough to entice them to stick around with the
very,
Mets.
yeah,
Uh,
hard to argue with
yeah.
money.
Because it's not like they're old, they're long in the tooth. Don't get me wrong, but last season Verlander won the Cy Young. Scherzer was looking hot, so it's
Yeah.
not like these guys are coming off of meh seasons and they're kind of continuing that. These are guys with proven track records, and they've still got stuff in the tank clearly. But yeah, it's just not working out for whatever reason, and the pitch clock is certainly going to be one of them.
Well, one thing that is working out is this podcast. And if you think that it has been working out and you've been enjoying listening to this podcast, we would just humbly ask that you head over to the Best of the Bay nominations. It's something we've been talking about for the last couple of weeks. It is a competition. It is a award for the best podcast. Is something that the city of Tampa Bay is doing. If you go to the Best of the Bay nomination site, the link will be in the description. We're going to post it on Twitter as well. It's going to be in our pinned tweet, I believe. If you go to that website, you'll go from the nomination site to the entertainment section, then go to best podcast, and then you can write in RBLR Sports. Just write that in if you think we've been doing a good job. If you think that we are the best podcast in the Bay, which I believe that we are. But if you think that too, and you'd like to help us out a little bit, we really would appreciate it. We really enjoy bringing you this podcast every single week, and we just want to hopefully get our name out there a little bit more so more people can enjoy it.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm actually working for that company, Creative Loafing, that's running this.
Oh,
So,
cool.
got a bit of a inside scoop, you know what I'm
Okay.
saying? Yeah, we're promoting it on the Buckstro. Definitely would appreciate y'all if y'all could write us.
Absolutely.
Yep, for sure.
Absolutely, and that's for the Buck Show, for the Rowdy Show, for the Lightning Show.
Yep,
Really, really good shows all around, and it's just I
absolutely.
think we provide some of the best content for the Bay out there. So if you feel the same way, feel free to write us in. We really would appreciate it. So
Absolutely.
from that, I think it's a good time to kind of have the discussion about probably the biggest thing we haven't discussed it too much yet, but it's probably the biggest thing that's happened this week in Rays land. And that is in between those two series, we got the press conference that Wander Franco was going to be benched for 2 games due to his behavior. The way that Cash put it, let me see if I can find the tweet, but the way that it was put was his behavior on the field, off the field, and the way that he's been a teammate has been negatively affecting the team, and they felt that was the way to handle that. And so it was a bit of a surprise in some ways and not in other ways. I definitely got my thoughts on it. Carter, when you saw that tweet, when you saw that happen, what was the first thing that went through your mind?
Well, my first thing is he's 22. I think that's something to keep in mind. He's a young guy. I'm 24. I think of myself as a young person. So, and he's younger than I am. So shoot, like I just graduated college. So he's still a young guy, and he's been the number one prospect in baseball for the past, for those 2 years. And, he's coming up, and it's tough. It's baseball. It's like the best, most talented guys in the world will have awful careers. Like they just won't succeed. So it's very, very difficult to keep kind of a good mindset. And it seemed like he was kind of letting it spill over, kind of letting it come out. I think this was necessary. You invest in a guy like this. They've got the 10-year, $200+ million contract to him. You can't just let him kind of run wild and kind of just let him make a bunch of mistakes and not be like, hey, man, this isn't cool, especially with the Rays, because they don't have very many veteran guys on this team. Like I think the oldest position player is, maybe Yandy or Christian Bethencourt, or Margot. They don't have any really solid veteran guys to step in and kind of be a mentor to him. So I think that this was an important move to kind of just say, hey, man, this isn't cool. You need to fix this because this is unacceptable at the major league level. So I was in support of it, but I know a lot of people were kind of like, man, you might be pushing him to request a trade or might be pushing a little too hard. I don't know if I buy all that. I think that he's accepted it. He's responded well. But Zach, how about you, man? Do you think maybe you're a bit more on one side or the other?
Well, I think the thing that first came to my mind when I saw all of that was good. It was like, that was good. It was like, yeah, that's a good decision. Because the truth is, when you watch the games, we've all seen it. I will say a couple of things. First of all, I don't know that all of the instances of him like not running it out to first were as a result of him not trying. I think they have, because of the leg injuries he has had consistently, and because he plays shortstop on turf at every 82 games out of the year.
Yep.
82. That's right.
81. You're
81,
good.
81, 81. Probably more because there's more saves with turf. But 81 games of
Right.
the year, he's playing shortstop on turf. So
All right.
guess what? His legs are gonna take a little bit of a beating. As a result of that, I think they have told him to lay off a little bit occasionally. Now there are also some times where I think he has hot dogged a little bit, or he's
Mhm.
not putting in the full 100% effort. And again, you made a really good point. Like I'm 24 as well. And I consider myself pretty young, and he's younger than both of us.
Right.
And he's a young person who's been given the world. He's been given a humongous contract, all the love and adoration of an entire baseball city. He's been plummeted up here as this incredible talent that's going to be the next big thing, going to be the next best shortstop in all of baseball. And
Right.
and he's lived up to that. He's I think fifth in all of baseball in WAR, and
Yeah.
and
Ridiculous.
that's with him playing badly or
Right.
not trying hard enough. Like
Yeah.
let's
Yeah.
like so I don't he was not benched for performance. That is
Mhm.
not the reason he was benched. Anyone who thinks he was benched, because I've seen that occasionally when you go and look at people that are reacting to this that are more like if someone like talking baseball or MLB posts about this, the responses are usually, well, he's got 3.8 WAR. Why are they mentioning him? It's like, well, that's not the point. It's
Right.
not because he's not performing. That's
For sure.
not the situation. And benching someone in this way is very rarely performance based. I mean, if you get you sometimes you get benched for performance, but this is not normally the way that it goes.
Right.
They got out in front of this. They were upfront with the media because they didn't want things to get to spiral, and they did not want
For
the
sure.
media to take this to somewhere it didn't need to go. They
Right.
said this is the reason. They were very direct with it. So this is the reason we're doing this for his benefit. And I think the key to that is the leadership you have in the clubhouse from Kevin Cash and from the
Mhm.
other veterans that are in the locker room. There are certainly a lot of players on this team that are very young, but you
For
do
sure.
have guys like Zach Eflin. I think probably the most powerful thing to come out of this was the interview that Zach
Yeah.
Eflin did,
Mhm.
where he talked
Yep.
about the way that he's been helping Wander. And here's the thing, right? There's been some there's been some reaction to that online of like, well, Zach Eflin just came in and he's the only one who's talking to Wander.
Right.
I think you got to understand what it's like to be someone at that age and who's been given so much and what that does to you and how that affects you. It's isolating because you're this young person who now you have all of this wealth and all of this fame, and it's I can only imagine what it's like to try to build relationships with people when that is your life, when that is the way that people around you and know what you are and know who you are. Having to there's got to be a desire from him to perform and to live up to those expectations.
Mhm.
And this is a team full of guys who are all trying to do that and all try to do that at the highest possible level. And so then I think that there's definitely a situation where you have a lot of guys who are leaders on that team and are trying to push it forward. But I think what Zach Eflin did is just had some perspective as an outsider who wasn't in this group of trying to get where we're trying to go, which is win a championship, to come in and say from the outside who's getting on board with that and wanting to win that championship, to come in and take a look and see and be like, I think he just needs a different approach. And to me, that's what I think Zach Eflin did. Is like, I think he needs to be talked to a different way than maybe
Mhm.
some of the other he has been talked to. And I think that's so valuable. And I think that when you look at the reason why they raised paid for Zach Eflin as much as they did, I guarantee you it was not just based on his stuff. They did their research on this guy. They knew the kind of guy he was, the kind of teammate he was on the Phillies, the kind of person he was, the kind of teammate he was. And they knew this guy is going to be beneficial to our locker room as well as our team from a performance perspective. And that's what he's done. Zach Eflin is when you go and look at this offseason, when you go back and look at the 2023 offseason and you look at the most impactful signings of that offseason, I think anyone would be remiss not to put Zach Eflin, not just for the Rays, but at the top of that list for all of MLB because of the way that he's affected this team. Where would this team be if Zach Eflin were not there starting when we were losing those, when we've lost those kinds of pitchers? He's been such a valuable arm for us, and I think you're just showing even more of his value in the fact that he's willing to go the next level with some guys because he's got a little bit more experience. He's got a little bit of a different perspective because he's not been a part of this organization, and he's going out of his way to do a little bit more to help. And I think that's really cool to see. So I think it was the right decision. I think Kevin Cash knows exactly what he's doing. I think he's trying to save Wander from himself a little bit and
For
say,
sure.
and if you want to be really cynical, well, he probably needs a couple rest days anyway, so it works out. But I think Kevin Cash has said, let's get in front of this because look, we still have the best record in baseball by a couple games.
Mhm.
This is still an incredibly good team, and even though we're having a rough month, Ben, who is on the IL, put a really good tweet notating how tough the entire American League has been playing. When you go look up and down the American League and how these players have been, how all these teams have been playing recently, there's been a lot of rough win-loss records over the last couple weeks. So this is not just a Rays problem. It's the dog days of summer. We're getting to that point where that's where we are. And so they picked a good time when they felt like this is a good time before we get too far into the season, before we get too deep into this. Let's cut it off at the head. Let's get him this time to actually reflect a little bit and think on these things. And then let's go back out there. And he performed the second he got back on the field.
Home
Boom,
run.
home run immediately. And the next at bat, RBI single.
Yeah. Yeah.
Anyone who is questioning if this was the right decision, just watch how Wander plays over these next couple days. He needed a reality check. He needed a couple days off. That's exactly what he got, and I think it's for the best. And anyone who's taking it any farther than that is either Mark Tompkin or is just someone who is trying to be intentionally malicious on that.
I like the Mark Tompkins chat. Yeah, he's a trip. But yeah, I'm with you. The entire, because the Royals and the A's especially, the A's were playing unsustainably bad.
Out of their mind.
You know what I mean? Like they're still a major league
bad.
baseball team, and it's baseball. It's random. There's a bunch of things that can happen. So the A's were not going to be 10-50 for the rest of the season. So they had to bounce back a little bit. They went on that little win streak. The Royals, the same thing. Like that, the Jordan Lyle stat is just brutal. Like he had lost every single start. Like the team had lost. So that was unsustainable. So, the Royals are not going to be this bad. They're still not going to be a good team, but they couldn't have been this bad. So I think that there's just a lot of really crappy baseball being played by some of the American League teams, and they're just starting to bounce back. So there's a bit more evenness, a bit more parity. So the good teams are kind of starting to lose a little bit more, and the bad teams are starting to win a bit more just because, like I said, unsustainable. They're going to progress towards the mean a little bit. But yeah, the Wander thing, like you said, you kind of hit all the points. It's nothing more to look into this. It's been talked to death, I'm sure, by other Rays fans and around the league because Wander's a superstar. The El Patron, billboards and everything. So yeah, there's nothing more to say about it. That's just it was just a tough situation, but I think the Rays handled it really well.
Yeah, and I think it sort of I think Ray's late kind of got more compounded because the next day we get the Shane McClanahan starts, and he has a so-so start, but then in the fourth inning, or it was the fifth, I think it was the fourth inning, he gets pulled very precautionarily, and I think Ray's Twitter just sort of like shut down and like self-imploded because like Wander is benched, Shane is hurt, it's over, we're done. Tyler had a bad start. The season is over, and that's how it goes.
Yeah,
and the good thing is that all the reports coming back after that we've seen since then have been very positive. That he's being pushed back 2 days just to give him a little bit of extra rest. But he said it sounded like he was willing and able to start on schedule if he had needed to. But Cash is just going to always be precautionary there. Sure. And again, the reason to me this week, and I posted this on Twitter, all this week has showed me is that the Rays is the best manager in baseball because he has the mindset of what you need in order to win a World Series, which is he sees the whole season. When he's managing a game, he manages for the game, but he also has in mind the whole season, where we're trying to go as a team, where the end goal is. The most important thing in the season is not to win this one series against the Royals or even this one game, even the series. It is not the most important thing in the world at all. And he has the awareness to say, let's pull Shane. Let's be careful. If we lose this game, whatever, it does not matter. It's a series against the Royals in June. No one's going to remember it in 2 weeks. So let's take care of our ace to make sure he's okay. And it kind of sounds like the thing he was struggling with, he may have made it worse if he kept pitching. If it's really a back thing, if he just needed to rest it out and continuing to pitch with a minor back tweak like that actually may have made it worse. So it's very likely that Cash made an incredibly good decision there to take him out of the game when he did. It's just another proof that we have a really good manager, and anyone who says otherwise is just incorrect.
Right. Yeah. No, I'm with you. I think Kevin Cash is definitely one of the best managers in baseball, if not the best. Because I always think of you can't coach talent, right? I mean, there's plenty of situations where Kevin Cash makes the right move, and then the guy goes out there and just stinks. I mean, like it's you can't go out there and pitch for the guy. So it's there's only so much you can do, and I think Kevin Cash does the most with what he has. So yeah, I'm with you there. The Shane thing, yeah, tough situation. Really glad that he's doing well. I think he threw a flat ground or something today and reported for good. A lot of fist bumps with the training staff, so that's a good sign. Yeah, and being pushed back a couple days, that's wonderful. Just he's on both of my fantasy teams as well, so I need him to stay healthy for that as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, I would love obviously you want to see Shane make his regular scheduled start, but more importantly, like you said, in the broad sense of that, you want to see him continue to be healthy. So I think it's far more, that's obviously far more important than just, oh, well, we want to get him in. No, like let him have more rest days. And that's a beautiful thing. And like you said, best manager in baseball. I think I'm with you. It's definitely the most consistent team, arguably in the past 5 to 10 years. So during his tenure. Yeah. So it's tough to argue that point. But yeah, hopefully Shane can get better soon. Well, obviously he's getting better. So hopefully that continues to be the case. Yeah, really excited to see his next start, and hopefully he can bounce back.
Yep, absolutely. And when you look at the rest of the series, we had a really, really good start from Tosh Bradley on.
Oh yeah.
Was that? I think that was Saturday. No, it was Friday. Friday was his start. Really good start. He's continuing to just look really, really good.
Super different.
Yeah. And then we had a good start from Zach Eflin this series. And then I think I'm mixing series up because Eflin started the middle game of the Royals series. I think. Oh, that was Baltimore. That's where he had a good start. That's right. So just finishing some things up for this week. Taj is continuing to look good. Eflin looked good. Chirinos had a rough start yesterday.
Yeah.
And, a lot of that is some regression, because he's had a couple of really good starts where he's just not a lot of runs. The way that he pitches, he's going to in my mind, if you go 6 and give up 3, I'm good with that because that's kind of the way that he pitches. And occasionally he's going to go 6 and give up 7. That's going to happen. It's going to happen. And I'm not overly worried about it. He's the 5th starter. At the end of the day, your 5th starter is going to have those kinds of results occasionally. And there's not really much you can do about that. It just kind of is what it is. He won't pitch that badly, probably again this year, hopefully. But he got his really, really bad start out of the way. Hopefully he got his worst start of the year out of the way in June. And then we have the whole rest of the season. He's not as bad as he looked in that start. And at the end of the day, you can't win every single game, and a series against a team that, again, you made a really good point. They're playing bad all year. They're not going to play horrible baseball every single game. They're going to have a couple good games. This Waters guy, we just cannot. We just don't seem to have an answer for this guy who's
right.
I didn't even know who he was before the series started, but I'm never going to be able to forget him because he is somehow he is a Rays killer.
Yeah.
I cannot with this guy. But I'll be glad to see him leave town. That's for sure. I don't know if I'm curious if he's starting today or not. I hope he's not, but he probably is.
Right.
So that's you have any other kind of thoughts on the Royals series?
No, I mean it's the Chirino start. Oh man, yeah, it kind of reminded me of the Fleming start earlier in the year where Cash just kind of left him out there because the bullpen. I mean, it's the Rays. The bullpen is always going to be banged up and kind of overworked. That's just how things are. So yeah, it's tough. They had to kind of just let him take his lumps and just kind of eat those innings. Obviously, in an ideal world, you don't leave a starter out there and if with enough time to give up 7 runs. But this isn't an ideal world, so they had to let him go. This is definitely not who Yanni Chirinos is. He's not going to give up 7 runs a start. And like you said, he's the 5th starter. It's you're not going to find a team with 5 starting pitchers that have ERAs under 3, or that just doesn't happen in baseball. That's just not how it is. This is not the Orioles of the 70s or the 80s or whenever they had that ridiculously good pitching staff. But yeah, Chirinos is going to bounce back. He'll be fine. And worst case scenario, I think we're going to get into this, but worst case scenario, the Rays maybe go out and add some depth, some starting pitching depth. I know there are going to be some teams that are going to be sellers. There are a lot of on paper talented teams that have been underperforming a lot. I mean, the White Sox are a team that comes to mind. Lance Lynn could be available. So there's definitely options out there. If Yanni, maybe he has a few more rough starts, maybe not as rough as this one, but it could certainly happen. So that's something worth exploring. But also, again, it's the 5th starter. Let's take a chill pill. Not the end of the world for sure.
No, not at all. I mean, we continue to get really good starts from our top of the line guys. Eflin had a good start this series. Shane I'm sure will be fine and continue to do exactly what he's done. I have no doubt that Tyler's going to come out today and shove. And Taj has consistently continued to build on what he's doing every single time he goes out there. He continues to build. He continues to get a little better every single time he's out there. I'm super impressed with him. I did not expect him to be this big of a contributor, mostly because of I didn't think we were going to have the injuries we had, but he's been a really impressive contributor to this team. And I've been really happy with his development, and I'm excited to see where his development continues to go. But he's been a fantastic part of this team so far this season. Speaking of some of the most fantastic parts of this team, we're going to go ahead on to our segment where we talk about our bat and arm of the week. Carter, I don't know if you're familiar with this, but once a week we give a bat and arm of the week to who the player who we think is the most important player of that week, who's the best performer of that week. The arm of the week is a little bit different than we normally would do it. I'm giving my arm of the week to Shane McClanahan, and the reason for that is because besides of beyond his base performance, which is always excellent, what I think he showed in his last start on Thursday, despite the fact that he had to come out of the game, despite the fact that he was injured, is he has an ace mentality. He has that mentality of, I don't want to come out of this game. I'm fine. I want to stay in this game. I'm gonna get out of it. I'm gonna find a way to get 6 and give up as few runs as possible. And I think that's what makes him the ace of this team. It makes what he does every week so impressive, because he just has the mentality of, I'm going to stay out here. I'm going to make things happen. I'm not going to let this team down. And that is what you need from your top of the line starter. And that's what he's always done. And I'm always super impressed with him every single time he goes out. And it's not just his performance based on, the outcomes. It's the way he goes about it, his mentality. And that's just always super impressive to me. So he's my arm of the week.
For sure. Yeah, I'm with you. I would either go Shane or Zach Eflin, but I'm going to stick with you with Shane because Eflin pitched wonderful against the Royals. He pitched really well. Did a great job. But yeah, definitely Shane is always, he's their ace. He's the best pitcher on the staff, arguably the best pitcher in the American League right now, maybe even in baseball. He's fantastic, and he just goes out and does his thing. He went to USF, go Bulls. That's all they do is they perform. No, he's definitely one of the best pitchers in baseball. And it's just, it's just another week for him. It's kind of become boring almost. And I hate to say that about greatness, but that's just, you just see Shane McClanahan on the board and you're like, oh, okay, 6 innings at least, maybe 1 or 2 runs given up, bada bing, bada boom. That's it.
Yep.
So yeah, arm of the week, Shane McClanahan for sure.
Yep. Taj also was deserving. He went 6 strong. Only gave up 3 hits, 8 strikeouts. Really impressive start from him. He's going to earn some arm of the weeks for sure. Going to our bat of the week, I think this is a guy who, I've said it last week, maybe too many times, but this guy is box office. He is a superstar in every sense of the word. He's money every single time he's up to bat. It's Randy Arozarena. He had a 223 WRC plus this week. Just absolutely killed it. Had 6 RBIs, home run. He is so entertaining every time he's up to bat. And I think the thing that is so underrated about him is his plate discipline.
Oh, it's so much better.
What was there was a stat during the Randy Land game they put on the screen. I think it was since the beginning of May, Randy has the most walks of any player in all of the American League. So
Yeah.
this is a guy who you think of him as a slugger who's just you're just driving the ball over the field, and he is that. But he also has incredible plate discipline. If you're gonna walk him, he will take his walk and he'll be on base for the next guy, which is usually Isak Paredes, who also had 5 RBIs this week.
Yeah.
And they have a really good duo there of if you're gonna walk me to get to Isak, that's great because he's gonna drive me in. And there's such a good trust factor in this team of trusting the next guy. Sometimes you see on teams where guys feel like I have to score here because I don't feel like the next guy behind me can do that. That is not the way this team feels, and you can see it in the way that they're willing to take their walks and just say, put me on base so the next guy can drive me in. And I think it's a really healthy mentality for a team to have. And I think Randy is the epitome of that.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, Randy's plate discipline is ridiculous this season. I mean, he leads the Rays in walks. And I think I don't know if he's matched his last season walk total, but I think he's pretty darn close. And we're not even halfway through the season. It's just been insane to see the development of his eye because, he's always been a home run hitter, getting doubles, just barreling baseballs. But now he's actually like you said, he's taking his walks. And it's really fun to see. And like you said, Isak being behind him, being such an amazing RBI guy is certainly a big help. But my bat of the week is actually going to be Yandy Diaz. He was really hot this week. He was really good. He's on one of my fantasy teams as well. I know I keep bringing that up, but he's been fantastic this season. Kind of went through a bit of a lull, because he got off to such a ridiculously hot start. But now he's kind of back to doing his thing. But yeah, Randy's definitely worthy. Randy Arozarena against the Baltimore Orioles is one of the greatest players to ever play the game of baseball. I mean, his numbers against Baltimore are just insane. And then I think he got hit in the ribs this past week too. And after that, he was like, all right, you want to plunk me? I'm going to hit the crap out of the ball every freaking at bat. And it was beautiful to watch. It was beautiful to watch for sure. So Randy's definitely deserving of that. But yeah, it's been a great offensive week, if nothing else, for the Rays, for sure. And Randy's been a big contributor.
Absolutely. He currently leads the American League in on base percentage at a 410 on base percentage.
Yeah.
Which is insane.
Disgusting.
You had a really good call out that he has 43 walks on the year so far. Last year he had 46.
Yeah.
So he's on pace to more than double his walks, which is not something that you see guys do. No. Which is awesome. He's got 54 RBIs on the season. He's a complete package of a player. And I think there was some discussion at times that maybe Randy was only a playoff guy, and in the regular season he was not quite the same as he was, which is not accurate when you look at the way he's performed. He has 2 seasons in a row with at least 65 RBIs and 20 home runs, and this year he's going to easily eclipse that and do even more. He has 2 seasons in a row of 20 stolen bases. He's going to do that as well this year for sure. He's consistently really good, and I think any idea that he's like, well, he only performs in the postseason is completely out the window now. He has shown that he performs at all levels at all times, and he performs in ways that you may not even think based on the profile you may see of him. He's going to get on base, he's going to steal bases, and he's going to hit home runs. He's a great watch. Every at bat for him is a pleasure to watch, and it's just so fun. We get a guy like that on our team.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love the fact that you mentioned how they trust each other and how Randy's plate discipline is stemmed from that. I'd imagine that now he's not so eager to do everything himself because he knows that Isak's behind him. He's got the Grays have a great lineup. I remember the Evan Longoria days when Evan Longoria was kind of doing that. It felt like every time he came up to bat, he was just forcing it. I remember the favorite thing for pitchers to do was to throw a breaking ball low and away, and Longoria would just chase it for strike 3, and that'd be the at bat. Because behind him, he had John Jaso behind him. I mean, Casey Kochman. No disrespect to any of those guys, but if they're your 4 or 5 or middle of the lineup guys, you don't have a great offense. So it's been fantastic to see the Rays just have a complete lineup for the first time in kind of a long time to the point where they're like an offense first team. It's weird. It's like, I'm not used to this. This isn't how the Rays play baseball normally. So it's really fun to watch. And Randy's obviously one of the biggest, if not the biggest part of that.
Yeah, it's been interesting to see the evolution of this team because you had 2020 where they were also had a great offensive year, and then last year they had kind of a rough year, and we've kind of bounced back to that. It'll be interesting to see how this team as we go in forward, if we continue to have this incredible offense, I think we will. I think we're building such a great young core of players that's going to continue to be developed that way. And I think it shows the talent of our scouting department and our talent acquisition and development departments of this team, because we've consistently been able to bring in talent, develop it, and then put it on the major league level and let it perform. And you've seen it with guys like Isak Paredes, with Josh Lowe, who was kind of moved through the minors and now is performing really well at the major league level. Manuel Margot, we've gotten great performances out of him since he's been in the Bay. This team is just really solidly constructed. I think that's something when you look at other teams in baseball. It's an easy example. It's almost a painfully easy example is the Yankees. Look at that team. They don't have a natural outfielder on that team. They have maybe one or two natural outfielders on that team right now, and it is painfully obvious every time you go out, you watch that team. I think once Harrison Bader comes back and Judge come back, then they're a little bit better off. But like there's some teams that are so poorly constructed right now out there. And then you look at the Rays, and it's just so clear that this team has such a good vision for the way they're constructing their roster and constructing this team. And we're just lucky that we have a fan base that's run so well, or a team that's run so well. The fan base,
Right.
you got some work on the fan base, but the team is run incredibly well.
Yeah, I mean, the Rays have the best front office in baseball. It's not even really a contest. And yeah, I mean, you mentioned the guys that they've kind of brought up and brought through the system, but their scouting department's just ridiculous. Like they got Isak for Austin Meadows, and Austin Meadows was coming off some really fantastic years. So, you kind of saw that trade. Now it was kind of like, well, okay, we'll see what goes on. But Isak, I mean, good gracious, he's a borderline all-star this year. If the Rays didn't have so many dang all-stars, he might make the team. But they can't give the Rays 6 or 7 all-stars, so you gotta cut the line somewhere. But yeah, he's been really, really good, and I think the Tigers are they're kind of regretting that one for sure. And Josh Lowe and Margot, yeah, they've been absolutely fantastic. And Luke Raley, I mean, Luke, he's Luke, I am your father, whatever nickname you want to give him. He's just, corn-fed country guy, just going out there and hitting the crap out of balls and running around the bases, looking goofy, but running kind of fast. And yeah, this has been a really, really fun team to watch for sure. And it has everything to do with the scouting and the front office.
Yeah, absolutely. So now, as we're kind of wrapping up here, you've been watching this team all year, and you're getting a chance to kind of chat some Rays here. So what are some of your thoughts on this team as you've been watching it throughout the year? What are some thoughts you have on the team, or some things you've been noticing that you might want to talk about a little bit?
Absolutely. I think the RBLR Rays retweeted one of my tweets about the bullpen, and that's definitely something that's been kind of top of mind, just because the Rays historically have always had such a fantastic bullpen, and this year has been a huge. I don't want to be dramatic, but it's been a pretty big regression. You look at their numbers, and even the advanced analytics bear it out. The fielding independent pitching, only the Nationals and the Athletics have a worse FIP than the Rays, and that is not good. Their BABIP is the lowest in baseball. So the production they're getting right now, you could argue, is based a lot around. I hate that people look at BABIP and say, oh, well, that's the luck factor. And I get it. It sort of is. But I try not to be too one way or the other with that. But it definitely is an indicator that a team is getting a bit lucky with balls in play and stuff like that. And the Rays have been getting pretty lucky. The statistics bear it out. And they're middle of the road in ERA. So I just think that the bullpen is a huge issue. And I think that if they don't address it, it could maybe come back to bite them. I know there have been teams like the 2019 Nationals come to mind. They won the World Series with Daniel Hudson as their closer and just a bunch of guys that you've probably never heard of in the back end of that bullpen. It was mostly Scherzer and Strasburg, obviously, carrying them through. So teams can survive without a bullpen, but that just doesn't seem to be the Rays way. You always hear the Rays way. So that's kind of the biggest concern for me. But obviously there are so many positives that outweigh that concern that I hate to sound like such a negative Nancy, but it's just, it's tough. They lost that big game to the White Sox. They blew the 7-run lead or whatever in the 9th inning. They lead the league in blown saves, or at least they're tied in the league in blown saves. We saw it in the Royals game the other night. They lost a bunch of leads because of the bullpen. So it's definitely something that, I don't want to be like, oh, it's panic mode, but it's something that needs to be addressed. It's something that needs to change. I know Kittredge is coming back, But, I don't know that Kittredge coming back in August is going to solve all of the problems of the bullpen. So that's kind of something that I keep in mind whenever I watch this team, especially when you watch Jason Adam blow like 50,000 saves. It feels like, I know it's not actually that way, but I don't know. It's been a bit tough to watch for sure.
Yeah, it's been a bit. I think it's been such a difficult thing to watch is kind of what you're saying about how it's not what we come to expect as Rays
Right.
fans. We've had such great bullpen performances in the past that we don't expect to see blown saves ever. And the truth of the matter is when you look at the outcomes that the Rays bullpen is getting, it's not what we want to see at
No.
all. When you go one step deeper, I think you see that the stuff and the actual pitches that they're making are good. They're just not getting the outcomes that they want to be getting right now, and that's unfortunate. And I think some of that is sequencing. I've talked about that before. I think there could be some adjustments to their sequencing that's going on there a little bit. I also think some of it is it's a long season, and I would be curious to see if this is just the bad half of the season. When you look at the way Jason Adam pitched last year and how consistent he was, he had some blowups here and there. They were just constant. They were just sort of less frequently. My prediction is that he's going to have a really good second half of the year, and we're just getting a lot of concentrated blowups at this point of the year. The other thing to take into consideration with that is this bullpen has been taxed more than any bullpen in Major League Baseball
100%.
because of the injuries to the starting rotation.
For sure.
So this bullpen has had more opportunities to look bad than any team in baseball, and there've been more pressure put on the arms that are in that bullpen to perform than any team in Major League Baseball this year. And so you do see some of those, and so you're seeing some of the negative effects of that is if you use your bullpen too much, you're going to have blown saves. And unfortunately, they have been forced to do that because of the injuries that they've sustained. The good news is that they are getting guys back. Sean Armstrong has come back and been a good force on this team. Kittredge is coming back. Colby White is starting to pitch well in the minors and is going to start making his way up to Durham soon, hopefully. This team has some internal reinforcements, and here's the thing. There's a lot of people that are suggesting we go make a trade for the bullpen. The question I would ask for people that are suggesting we go make a big trade is, when is the last time that a team made a trade for a big bullpen arm and it worked out?
Right.
When you look at the last couple times that teams paid through the nose for a reliever, it did not work out. Sometimes it worked out eventually. Like the big one to me is Josh Hader. Look at what happened there. The Padres way overpaid to get Josh Hader on their team, and he was so bad for them. He's righted the ship now. But what fans are asking for is for a right now solution. And so then if you go and spend your prospect capital on a reliever, you're really rolling the dice, even if it's somebody who's been really, really good. And the truth is, there's not a whole lot of relievers that are really, really good, and there's even few that are available. You're right. 100%. They're just not gonna. There's just so few. The funny thing is, the one team that had some good relievers that I thought maybe would be available was the Reds. I was like, the Reds, maybe the Reds, but then they started playing well, so I could forget that. That's not gonna happen now. They might be buyers at the deadline now, which is awesome for the city of Cincinnati. I have a couple friends who are big Reds fans, so I'm excited for them. Their City Connect jerseys are like cool. So I'm just happy for them. I hope for their sake that they go on and play the Rays in the World Series. That'd be awesome. I love that. Awesome. The Reds are a fun team. Jonathan India, go Gators. The super fun team. I'd love to see them in the postseason make a run there. But it just goes to show you, there's just so few teams out there with really good relief pitching that are not like holding on to with all their might, because there's just so few of that.
No, for sure.
The solution. So then when you look at, what could the Rays do to fix this problem? I think be patient is one thing, and that's what they're doing. The other thing that people are suggesting is going out and getting starting pitching. And I actually think that's slightly more likely than going and getting bullpen help. I do think there's a world in which they trade some prospects for another fifth starter to maybe help bridge the gap through this season. I see that I see that as a possibility. I don't really have a name off the top of my head of someone that I think they could go for, but I think there is a chance that they do that.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I feel like I should have prefaced my little soliloquy there, my rage, if you want to call it, with I don't believe in giving up huge prospects for bullpen arms ever. That's like the only two really situations that kind of worked out were the Edwin Diaz trade to the Mets and then Aroldis Chapman to the Cubs. But even that, I mean, Chapman was there for half a year and they won the World Series. So I always say, like, if you get a World Series out of a trade or a championship, then you won the trade no matter what. But at the same time, Gleyber Torres has turned into a pretty productive player. I mean, he's had his ups and downs, obviously, but I feel like you would take Gleyber Torres over Aroldis Chapman at this point.
Yeah, well, and Chapman, I don't know that Chapman was really the reason they won that World Series
100%,
either.
you could argue that. Yeah, so it's not even necessarily like he led them to the World Series. Like, no, yeah, they had a great roster. They had an amazing team. So yeah, I'm never going to advocate for big time spending, but the Rays scouting department is just so fantastic. And they seem to just, take a guy off like they'll sign me and then turn me into a high leverage reliever. So it's been, they did the Robert Stevenson thing, which he's been actually pretty productive. I really like Stevenson. He's got some good stuff out of the pen. So it has been a bit of a surprise to see them kind of spiral with the bullpen and not maybe be a little bit more proactive. Obviously with the Stevenson deal and all of that, they've been a bit proactive, but I just, I don't know. I feel like that there's maybe a minor move or two to be made just to help bolster the bullpen a little bit. And like I said, you're not trading Caminero or Head or any of the big time prospect. No. Those guys are untouchable. You only trade them for you don't trade them because the Rays aren't going to trade for a big time pricey guy. So yeah, I don't, because Joe Ryan got traded for Nelson Cruz and he's been an ace for Minnesota. That one hurts. The Rays usually win trades and they kind of lost that one. So yeah, I'm definitely not advocating for any of the big time prospects to be traded. Not at all.
Yeah, the Nelson Cruz Joe Ryan trade is definitely an interesting one because I think that their trade was a good trade at the time.
Right.
And I think that, and I don't know that I necessarily regret it because I think that what Nelson Cruz brought to this team in that short time was very valuable.
Right.
Obviously, Joe Ryan is shoving, which is great for him.
Yeah.
Love to see that. And so that's an unfortunate situation, but it's a good point that when you trade high level prospects that you've developed and you've put a lot of work into, you have to be okay with the fact that they may go out there and shove for their new team. And that may happen. Absolutely. And that's happened to a lot of players that the Rays have been traded when they've traded players away and gotten those prospects back. They have had that dividend pay. Well, that can happen the other way if you trade your top prospects away. So, at the end of the day, I think there's a chance they'll make some small additions. I think the biggest addition has been Jake Diekman. That dude's been shoving every single time he goes out there. So I think that's your bullpen arm. And I think once you get Kittredge back and maybe we'll see some Colby White. For some reason, whenever I think White, I think Sean White. And I don't know why I do. I've got snowboarding in my brain, I guess. But Colby White, you may see him this season as well. So I think there are reinforcements coming in that way. And I'm excited to see what the Rays decide to do at the trade deadline. I don't really have a good feel for it at the moment. I kind of think they may not do too much, but it'll be interesting to see. And it'll be more interesting to see what the other teams around the Rays do. The Yankees, the Orioles, the Blue Jays. How are they going to react to the fact that they're 5 and 10 games back in the division? I'm very intrigued to see what the Yankees do at the trade deadline because they're in danger of going under if they don't figure something out, which would delight me greatly. But I'd be very interested to see what they're going to do.
Yeah. Anytime the Yankees lose it's beautiful. I like to see the Yankees lose more than I like to see the Rays win. It's just I despise the Yankees. Yeah, so I'm with you. I mean, the rest of the AL East is any of them could really turn it around because, they hit a hot streak or maybe the Rays or the Orioles or one of the other teams hits a cold streak. So a lot of buyers in the AL East. The Blue Jays could be interesting to watch. I mean, they've got their own litany of issues because they have a super talented roster that just hasn't been great. I mean, the Yankees are definitely a team to watch because you know how Yankees fans are. The ownership, they're a bit impatient, and Aaron Boone is – kind of fighting for his job at this point. So, it's a lot of uncertainty there. And then the Orioles, I mean, the Orioles are young and they're really good, but they're really good like right now. So they could kind of take advantage of the fact that they have a lot of these guys on team controlled contracts and maybe try to go out and get a high priced arm that maybe they couldn't afford later on when they have to re-sign these guys. So it's kind of interesting to see how that all plays out with the trade deadline for sure.
Yeah, it's gonna be very interesting to see what happens, and it's part of the fun of this baseball season is there's just more and more stuff to come, and it's going to be fun to see what happens. And one of the things that's going to be fun to see what happens is seeing some of our injured players come back from injury, and thankfully we've got some pretty good updates on some of that. Like we've been saying, Colby White is continuing to pitch in the minor leagues and move his way up. Brandon Lau, really good news there. He's feeling good. He's going to start playing in the complex league soon, and then probably get cashed at somewhere between 15, 20, 30 at-bats, maybe in Durham, and we might see him back at the major league level, which is awesome to hear. We already talked about Shane. He's fine. I don't think there's any other big injury updates unless there's something you can think of off the top of your head. I don't think so. So not too much else. The other big thing that I wanted to plug on this episode is, I don't know if y'all have seen it yet, but we've got this really cool guy named Pat Davenport who is starting to write some articles for us. He's written some really cool stuff. He just wrote an article called Box Office Ballers, which I don't know if that was influenced by the fact that I said box office about 20 times last week. I can't remember if it was last week or the week before, but it had a bit of coincidence. But I'm gonna say that I had a very small part of influencing, which what is a really fun article, really good read. I would go ahead, if you've got some time after you listen to this episode, go pop over to the RBLR Rays Twitter feed. There's a link there on the feed for the article. Go check that out. It's a great article. Give it a read. Pat's a great writer. He's writing some really fun stuff for us. Stick around for that. Stick around to keep seeing what he continues to write. He's doing some good stuff. Any other things you want to chat about before we wrap up today?
No, the bullpen thing was my main little bugaboo that I wanted to talk about, but I'm all good, brother. This has been a great episode. Thank you again so much for having me on.
Thanks for coming on. Thank all of you for coming in, continuing to make this a super fun experience. We couldn't do it without you guys coming and listening and being a part of this show. Like and subscribe to all of our feeds on YouTube, on Twitter, on Facebook Marketplace, Redbubble. Maybe we'll get some stickers on Redbubble. Go to shop.rbl Rays as well if you want a t-shirt. Thanks for joining us, and go Rays.
Go Rays.
Thank you for tuning into this presentation by RBLR Sports. On your way out of the stadium, please remember to like and subscribe.